This program is a community education production brought to you by the Bar Association of Montgomery County and the Montgomery County, Maryland Bar Foundation. The program is designed to provide you with general information regarding your rights and obligations under the law. It is not intended as specific legal advice. You should discuss the facts and circumstances of any particular matter with your own attorney and obtain advice specific to your case. The participants are local attorneys who have volunteered their time to bring you this program. We hope you find it informative and beneficial.
Welcome to Law School for the Public. My name is Ann Grover, and I'm a principal with the law firm of Joseph Greenwald & Lake. I work in their family practice. Most folks who have had a legal issue or received a notification for jury duty have been in our courthouses here in Montgomery County. After sitting in a courtroom, whether as a juror or a party, one often wonders, who is the judge? How is he or she selected? What are the requirements for becoming a judge? I'm joined tonight by Christina Bedallion and Judge David Lease to help us wade through the process of judicial selection and explain how our judges are selected and appointed. Christina Bedallion is a partner with Brodsky, Renahan, Pearlstein, and Bouquet and practices in family law. Prior to joining the firm, Ms. Bedallion clerked in the District Court for Montgomery County. Ms. Bedallion is an active member of the Bar Association of Montgomery County and the Women's Bar Association, and has served as co-chair of the Family Law Section of the Montgomery County Bar Association. She was honored as co-chair of the year in 2013. Ms. Bedallion has also served as secretary of the Women's Bar Association of Montgomery County, and since 2014 has served as an at-large member of the Women's Bar Association Executive Committee. Ms. Bedallion is the 2018 to 2019 chair of the Judicial Selection Committee for the Montgomery County Bar Association, and has previously served on the Judicial Selections Committees with the State Bar Association, Women's Bar Association, and the Montgomery County Bar Association. David Lease is a current judge on the Circuit Court for Montgomery County, having been appointed in December of 2017. A Montgomery County native, Judge Lease graduated from Charles W. Woodward High School in Rockville. He received his undergraduate degree from the University of Maryland at College Park and graduated summa cum laude from the University of Baltimore School of Law in 1991. Prior to his appointment to the bench, Judge Lease practiced law for 26 years and had an extensive litigation and appellate practice involving complex civil and criminal matters. He was co-founder of the Rockville law firm Smith, Lease & Goldstein, which operated for 18 years. Judge Lease is active in both the Montgomery County and Maryland State Bar Associations, having chaired numerous committees and sections and served 3 terms on the Maryland State Bar Association's Board of Governors. In the community, Judge Lease served for 16 years on the board of Voices for Children Montgomery, 2 years as its president, which is the court-appointed special advocate program operating in Montgomery County, which advocates for abused and neglected children in the foster care system. Christina, Judge Lease, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christina, can you tell us what types of judicial officers do we have in Montgomery County?
Well, since you said the word judicial officer, we have obviously judges, and then we have what we like to call magistrates. So the magistrates are actually appointed by the circuit court judges themselves. The administrative judge chooses the magistrates, and they are quasi-judicial officers. So that means that they don't actually get to issue an order, but they issue what we call recommendations. Generally, they are appointed to serve in a very specialized function. For example, in our family law cases, so since I handle family law cases as well, they handle specific issues that are in a family's divorce or custody type proceeding. Our judicial officers, or our judges, we have the district court and we have the circuit court, and they handle, some matters are the same, such as domestic violence cases. Both courts can handle those kinds of cases. Other issues are specific to one court or the other. So for example, district court is the only court that handles traffic matters. They handle smaller claims. They handle specific criminal cases. The circuit court tends to handle cases over a certain monetary number, value. Family law divorce cases are all in the circuit court as well. Serious criminal cases are in the circuit court. So.
Well, you said that magistrates are appointed by the judges and the chief judge. How about the judges in our district and circuit courts? How are they appointed?
Well, we go through a process by which it starts with a fairly lengthy application. Wants to know basically everything I've ever done in my entire life, and then there's the question at the end is if there's anything that you haven't disclosed that would reflect negatively on you, please disclose that now. That's about a 30-page application, and it asks background of the type of trials you have, but it also asks for information about attorneys that you've tried cases against, because they try to, I think they want to look at not only the people that are supportive of you, but people you've dealt with in your practice. Once that application is in, then that application actually goes to up to 13 different bar associations, and those are both the state and county bar and then a number of specialty bar associations. Each of those specialty bar associations has a committee that then investigates and reviews each applicant. They will then tend to all have interviews with the applicant. So when you're going through this process, you get very good at going to interviews and trying to cover the logistics of going to all those interviews. But they have parameters that they're looking at, what they're looking for in a judge, and so each of those bar associations in turn makes recommendations. They'll say whether they believe a judge is qualified, well qualified, not qualified, and sometimes they'll say not qualified at a particular time because they think the person needs additional time as an attorney before they'll be ready to be a judge. Then all those bar associations will forward their recommendations to what's called the Trial Court Nominating Commission here in Montgomery County. That commission, which is constituted by members of that are appointed by the governor as well as by the Montgomery County Bar Association, then take another comprehensive investigation, again vetting them, calling the judges, calling different attorneys. That group then interviews each of the applicants, and then from that they'll whittle a list of sometimes 30 or more folks at a time down to about 6 or 7 that then go on to the governor.
Okay. Christina, you heard Judge Lease talking about this incredibly voluminous 30-page application.
Rigorous.
What types of information do the bar associations and the different committees look for in that kind of information?
Okay, so I think it bears also pointing out that since we have an election that's coming up, the judges are up for election. And so what I think the voters in particular, what our citizens need to know is that when they go through this process, and as someone who's been on a couple of different committees, and so the Women's Bar has the things that they're interested in terms of their candidates, and the state and the county bars have somewhat of a different things that they focus on. But the application itself provides those that are doing the questioning, the vetting, key and sensitive and confidential, really, information that is not disseminated to the public. So your question was what kind of information? We're provided information as to whether or not there's any grievances. What is a grievance? A grievance is when this practicing lawyer has done something that has caused the client to complain about how they were represented. Okay, and so we take that very seriously. That's a very serious process, and so we look into whether or not there are any outstanding grievances, anything like that are still going through. We look up people on what we call case search, which is the public information of all the cases that have been filed, to see not only whether or not an individual has been a plaintiff or defendant in a case, but have they disclosed that they've been a plaintiff or defendant in the case, and also how many cases they have in fact litigated. So we're looking for people who have experience. We're looking for people who have hopefully a breadth of knowledge. We're looking for people who are obviously ethical. You would obviously want that in a judge. But when we interview, we're looking to see, do we think this person is going to be patient with all the different kinds of people that could be appearing before them? Do we think that this person is going to have a nice temperament and be listening? There's nothing that a litigator loves more. It's actually not always about the result, but sometimes it's actually about the process. Does my client feel heard? Is this person who is hearing this case and making a very important life decision for my client listening, paying attention, asking the right kind of questions so that my client feels like they got their day in court? It is an honor to be a judge. That's why we call them Your Honor. And it is an incredibly rigorous process, and we put a lot of time and effort into vetting the applicants to try and make sure that we have the absolute best applicant pool available for the governor to choose from.
And as far as the applicants themselves, Judge Lees, could you tell us what, if any, requirements do you have if you want to be a judge?
Well, there's the sort of the basic minimum requirement that the Maryland Constitution provides, which says you basically have to be a practicing attorney, you have to be over 30 years of age, you have to have lived in the state of Maryland for 5 years and lived in the jurisdiction that you are applying for at least the last 6 months. Once you have that, that's sort of the base. And then what the bar associations that are looking at and the trial court nominating commission, then they're looking for trying to weed out and find the best of the applicants. And they're looking for applicants that have, as mentioned, judicial temperament, which is an extremely important thing. It's not something that is easy to look at on a piece of paper and determine if someone has that temperament. That's really through the investigative process where the different associations and the commission are reaching out to judges, reaching out to other attorneys, especially attorneys that you've tried cases against, to see how did you manage litigation in a stressful, complex case. And so that's really what that process is looking for. It's sort of trying to find those individuals that will best fit the court that they're applying to and bring their experiences, their wisdom, their background to be a judge.
So, Anne, just to piggyback off of what the judge was saying, imagine if the sole qualifications are essentially being, essentially living locally, living in Maryland for a specific period of time, being a barred attorney, and being of a certain age. That literally means that someone who has never practiced in our circuit court or in our district court could suddenly become a judge. You could be a lawyer and never have actually litigated a case ever, and you could pay, what is it, $10?
$50.
$50, I'm sorry, and be on the ballot. So you would not know any evidentiary objections. You wouldn't know procedure. You wouldn't know any of the proper way to move the courtroom. You wouldn't have any of that insight that an experienced attorney, and again, through the vetting process, we're trying to find those attorneys, would be able to bring to the courthouse. It's not just about getting a judge appointed, it's about finding the best applicants and getting the people who are most worthy of the position. Otherwise, my husband, for example, he works in federal government downtown and but he fills all of those requirements. He could technically pay the money and, apply to be a judge in our circuit court without ever having entered his appearance and even stepped foot in the courthouse on a single occasion.
Which is why we're glad that deadline is passed. So give him any ideas.
Don't tell your husband about that yet.
I'm sure he'll watch this later and be irritated at me, but.
Well, everyone has watched the different disclosures and the different nominations at a federal level. So, for example, sometimes there are required financial disclosures. Are there required financial disclosures for our judges here in Montgomery County?
Right. So we also, in the vetting process, make sure that there are no, or we ask questions about tax liens, tax issues, having filed taxes, things of that nature. We also, as I said before, looking up in the case search, if an attorney who's applying to be a judge, for example, it's a red flag to me, has significant judgments entered against them. There's nothing wrong with having debts, but if you're an attorney, part of your job should be to know how to negotiate and simply at least pick up the phone and call somebody and be like, here's this issue that I have. So if you are a practicing attorney, oh, and also you want to become a judge, and you can't be bothered to pick up the phone to call and negotiate with someone a payment plan before a judgment is actually entered against you. In particular, the IRS, they just want to be paid. So if you can't pick up the phone to call the IRS to say, hey, can I make a payment plan before you actually enter a judgment against my house and there's a lien, that is a huge red flag to me. And oh, by the way, if I'm in a family law case and the husband or the wife on the other side is not paying their child support obligation and they're sitting on the stand, do I want that person to look at my judge or my magistrate and be like, yeah, judge, you know how it is when you have all these judgments against you and these debts that you can't pay? We should aspire to do better and to do more. That is not a situation we want to put our litigants in, and certainly our judicial system.
And as far as the interview process, you talked about all the specialty bars.
Right.
About how long, time-wise, is devoted to going and interviewing with different specialty bars?
Well, the process itself, when we talk about it, I put in the application. We also have writing samples that go in, and you know, to see if you can write and your ability to do so, because that's another important part of being a judge. Certainly on the circuit court, to do a lot of writing. But the process from the time you put in your application until the time you even meet with the nominating commission can be about 2 months. Time, and that's the time when you're interviewing with the specialty bars. And so you're going around, like I said, I think I interviewed last time with 13 because one new specialty bar had added their request to interview with judicial candidates. And so I remember interviewing up in Towson with the Women's Law Center I think at 5:30, and I had to be back in Rockville to interview with the Women's Bar Association, I think at 7 o'clock. And you're running around in traffic and you want to make sure you're on time.
That may not even be possible.
It was. I got there with about 5 minutes to spare, so I was driving the speed limit in the state the entire time.
And Judge Place is not unique in that respect, because I've had many candidates interviewing with us, for example, with the Women's Bar, and then having to jump into a car and go to another place. And that's why I said it can be a very rigorous process.
And the interviews themselves are generally between 20 to 30 minutes with the different associations. And you get a good sense as to how much work they've actually done, because they know everything about you coming in, and they'll hone in on a couple of key things that they want to ask you about, whether it's in your practice areas, or if you not practiced in a particular area, and if you haven't had that area of practice, what have you done to maybe learn about that practice, especially if it's going to be a key part of what that particular court does. Over the years, I applied for both district and circuit court positions and was fortunate enough to be nominated for both courts. But they do have sort of a different mission. And I felt, given my practice area, which was fairly broad some civil, criminal, even did a lot of landlord-tenant, that it sort of worked well for both courts. But there's some issues that you'd want to make sure that the person has that legal background in order to be able to function well as a judge when they take that oath, and you do orientation, and then you're hearing cases very quickly. And these cases are extremely important. I'm in the family rotation right now, and people come in and can't decide how best to deal with their children in terms of custody and access, and put it on me to make those decisions. And so it is, as you said, is in terms of being able to listen and making sure people are heard, because one thing I'm sure of in any case is that somebody's going to be unhappy with what I rule for the most part. And oftentimes both sides will be unhappy because I'm not doing what either side really wants me to do, because I don't think that's what's in a custody case in the best interest of the child, or in a financial case, I don't agree with how they're doing the math on their numbers.
Insofar as the process itself, so once the Judicial Nominations Commission sends the names up for the folks that they've vetted, what happens then?
Well, then I go, you go up, it goes up to the governor and through the governor's legal counsel, and then they do their own investigation. So it's sort of, by the time you get up to the governor, you've been investigated by 13 different bar associations. You've been investigated by the trial court's nominating commission, and now you're investigated by the governor's council and staff, and they do and double check, and they have all the information from all the bar associations as well. And I've seen, the matrix that they have there, and it shows, is the person well qualified, not qualified, and they, which runs down a list so that they can, and when the governor starts to review that, quickly determine if, where this person stands on that. By the time you get there, most of the candidates will have been deemed to be qualified or well qualified by all, if I would say certainly the majority, if not all of the specialty bars, because that's, I know, something that the commission looks at and says, why is a candidate not deemed qualified by a particular bar association? And you will get questions about that at the commission level. And then you meet with the governor, which is, a nerve-wracking interview in itself. And so you go in, you meet with the governor, and then after that, the governor sits down with his council, and they make a decision as to who they're going to appoint to the particular position that's open at the time.
But to keep in mind that, as Judge Lee said, after all the specialty bars in the county and the state bar do their work and it goes to the trial court nominating commission, this past year I actually had the privilege, since I'm going to be the co-chair next year for the county bar, to actually go to our county trial court nominating, and they ask the chairs also questions. So they say, oh, county bar, you said X, Y, and Z. Why did you say this? What happened in the interview? Who did you talk to? What did you do? We've had candidates who, since they're required to be Montgomery County residents, but they actually were a resident of a different county, just simply rent a place for a short period of time in Montgomery County. We had people, our committees actually do drive-bys to make sure that this person was actually living where they were supposed to be living. I've called, all of the references, and then from the references, other people looked up who they had cases against, like
Right.
you were saying, called up people who've been on the other side of cases and had conversations with them. And all of those notes are drafted up and submitted and then disseminated. And you're right, generally we know exactly where we want to go with your interview before you even step into the room.
Right. And the other thing that I forgot to mention was the Montgomery County Bar Association actually has a referendum that they send out to all the members of the county bar to weigh in to say whether they think the candidate is well qualified, or not qualified, or they just don't have enough information about that. We're in a big county here, so you don't know every attorney that's practicing, but it's another good check on the quality of the individual that's applying for the bench.
So aside from having absolutely no secrets by the time you get to your interview with the governor,
Pretty much.
Once the governor has picked up that phone, made the call, and selected somebody, what happens then as far as the general election?
Well, what happens is, because for the circuit court, once we're appointed, we would stand in the next general election. And so having been appointed in 2017, I'm standing in the 2018 general election. There are 7 judges that are who have been appointed with me. We're all running in this election. We have one person that has filed $50 and is running as a candidate against us. And so one of the things that we're doing now is we actually are in the process of campaigning, in a sense, as judges, which is interesting. It's not something that I ever thought I would be doing, but getting out on the campaign trail, one of the wonderful things about it is meeting all the different citizens in the county and the different constituencies and folks that are out there. And I think it does help connect us to the community. So it is a benefit that we have from that. So, and that's what we're doing, and we have a primary coming up on June 26th, and early voting begins June 14th and ends on June 21st. So, it's important for everybody to exercise their civic duty and vote. The other thing is, I addressed the jury pool today, which is another, I was talking about civic duties, and the jury pool comes in, and there's not too many things that we have to do anymore that is part of our citizenship. Voting is one. I think serving on a jury is another. So it's certainly something that would ask folks just to sort of look at the judges and make a reasoned decision as to who they're going to vote for.
And as far as once an election is completed and the judges have been elected, How long is that term? Do you know, Christina?
It's a 10-year term, right?
15.
15 years?
15-year term.
District court has 10
Okay.
years.
Well, keep in mind that so that person who's going to pay the $50 and doesn't go through the vetting process, they're also on for that same amount of term.
And that's 15
So-
years in the circuit court, 10 years in the district court?
Right, and
Yeah,
the
that
district
might have
court is
been-
the one court that, they don't run for election, they just merely get appointed, and then they have, get reviewed by the Senate, much like the federal judges do.
Okay. As far as people that are elected for 15 years, if you don't reach the retirement judicial senility age of 70, do you,
Right.
do you have to run again?
You do, you either get appointed again by the governor, and then you would stand in the next election, and you would just do it all over again.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. I would like to thank our guests, Christina Bedallion and Judge David Leese, for joining me and taking time to discuss our judicial selection process. If you want to know more about me or either of our guests, please look us up on our respective websites, www.brpfamilylaw.com for Christina Bedallion, montgomerycountymaryland.gov for Judge Leese, and www.jgllaw.com for me. Let us know what you think of the show and what topics you would like to see covered in future programs by emailing us at lawschoolforthepublic@gmail.com. Please join us for future shows in our Law School for the Public series, which explores various and timely legal topics. On behalf of the Bar Association of Montgomery County, we look forward to being with you again. I'm Ann Grover. Thank you.